I want to talk about Ken Buck. So for those of you who don't know, Representative Ken Buck has been in Congress for about 9 years now. He's from Colorado's 4th district, and he is considered one of the more quote unquote moderate Republicans. Now, what does that mean? Now, that doesn't mean he was in favor of, like, for example, saving Obamacare when Trump was trying to sink it. That doesn't mean that he is massively in favor of, you know, helping out the IRS, increasing their funding. It doesn't mean that there's like a bunch of Democratic priorities that he's also very supportive of, and that makes him more moderate or more bipartisan. What I mean about this is that he's not a MAGA Republican, and he believes that the country should be governed and is willing to make compromises in order to keep the government afloat and to get business done, like, for example, passing a budget and, for example, supporting our allies. He has an A- rating from Republicans for Ukraine, and that's because he's voted in favor of basically every single provision in favor of Ukraine, and he has been a big critic of the Republicans holding Ukraine aid. And the reason I bring this up, by the way, is because the discharge petition, if he was to sign onto one, which apparently this week Democrats are starting to officially sign a discharge petition. We got this announcement today. So if there was ever a time for you guys to call your congressman and say, hey, sign on to a discharge petition, it's coming around. I know it's coming around. You better be signing on to it. Now would be the time to call your representative and bring this up to them, be it Democrat or Republican. Anyway, if he is to sign a discharge petition, he needs to do it this week. And the reason why is Congressman Ken Buck, who we already knew was going to be departing from Congress soon. We thought it would be at the end of this session. We thought, oh, November, you know, come around 2025, Ken Buck isn't going to run again. No. Ken Buck has announced today, just like 4 or 5 hours ago, to the surprise of many, that he's dropping out this week. He's not even gonna stay around till the end of the year. He's donezo. He's out. He's outie, which means this is another House seat that the Republicans will be losing, another vote that the Republicans will be losing, further shrinking their House majority. I think it's down to 218. By the way, the amount of seats you need to have a majority in the House is 218. Just something to take a note of. So let's read the statement from this guy who's now resigning, to the surprise of many, including me. I didn't think he would resign this soon. I think he would be resigning, you know, in the future. It has been an honor to serve the people of Colorado's 4th District in Congress for the past 9 years. I want to thank them for their support and encouragement throughout the years. Today, I am announcing that I will depart Congress at the end of next week. I look forward to staying involved in our political process, as well as spending more time in Colorado with my family. Ken Buck. So it is no secret that Ken Buck has been unhappy with how Congress has been run this session. There is a good chance that by the end of this legislative session, by the end of the 118th Congress, we will find out that this has been the least productive Congress in American history. It's already the least productive Congress since the American Depression. But if they keep going, they can break some records. They can really hit it out of the park when it comes to uselessness. And Ken Buck has been unhappy about that. But Ken Buck has not only been unhappy about that, Ken Buck, as we've discussed, and is why before he steps out by the end of the week, I think he should sign his name onto that discharge petition, since he's going to be walking out. It's not like him being challenged is going to matter anyway. It's the Ukraine stuff has been a big disagreement. You know, trying to pass a budget. He wants them to be more bipartisan. That has been a big disagreement. He also disagreed with the Mayorkas impeachment. Ken Buck came out and said that he was against it because he didn't think it was constitutional, which he was right about. Ken Buck looked at the impeachment, was still looking at Congress, saw how unproductive it was, and said, why are we concentrating on the impeachment of Mayorkas? Not because he violated the law, not because he violated the Constitution, but just because we disagree with how, like, Democratic immigration enforcement, just because we disagree with Democratic immigration policy, and he was against it. But eventually they dragged him in line. And so I think that after having a bunch of the priorities he cared about undermined, being made to support things that he had determined to be unconstitutional, and having those priorities that he does care about having no end in sight for them actually getting addressed, like Ukraine aid, etc. And so he had just decided, you know what? I'm tapping out. I'm tapping out. I'm donezo. I don't want to do this anymore. And of course, I right now am making a bunch of assumptions. I am not Congressman Ken Buck. I do not know Congressman Ken Buck. I don't know anybody who knows Congressman Ken Buck. So I have to make a bunch of assumptions here. But if you listen to how Ken Buck has talked about his time in Congress recently, he's not happy. Do we have anything? Oh, snap. Okay, this is from 1 minute ago. I guess this is very recent. Only an 18-second clip. What's this?
This place just keeps going downhill, and I don't need to spend my time here. We've taken impeachment and we've made it a social media issue as opposed to a constitutional concept. Mike Johnson's ability to talk me into staying here is going to be about as successful as his ability into talking me into unconstitutional impeachments.
Wow. Damn. Okay. Well, I guess my assumptions about why he was resigning was as on point as they could be. So it seems that I have been listening to Ken Buck. Now, I'm not saying this is a revolutionary thing that I got it on point here. I just have been listening to Ken Buck's complaints. I guess that's more than what Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, has been doing when it comes to Ken Buck. Speaking of House Speaker Mike Johnson, apparently Ken Buck did not tell him he was going to resign. So Mike Johnson woke up this morning to find out his already slim House majority had become even slimmer, and he had no prep for it, and nobody bothered to tell him. What a relationship he has conjured with his moderate House members.
Supporting this TikTok bill.
I was surprised by Ken's announcement. I'm looking forward to talking with him about that.
Listen to that, by the way. We just listened to Ken Buck respond to hearing, because this was done before that thing we just listened to with Ken Buck. So Mike Johnson is trying to talk to him about it. He's trying to convince him to stay a little longer. But we already just heard the audio. Ken Buck, I don't think he's having it.
Trump not supporting this TikTok bill.
I'm not so sure about that.
How will it impact you being able to wrestle more with another lawsuit, at least for the time being?
Well, the strategy is still the same. Build consensus, keep the coalition together. I'm confident we can do that. We have big things ahead of us, but I think everybody understands the stakes and the necessity of working together. Sometimes we have to give up our preferences, but we're never going to compromise our principles. But we'll get the job done. We'll get the job done.
Were you still in the TikTok bill?
Damn. I think we had one more reaction I wanted to show. By the way, we're going to get a bipartisan solution. Yeah, tell that to Senator Langford. So we're going to talk about Senator Langford in a second, by the way. But one last reaction to this I had to show you guys. GOP Representative Pat Fallon reacts to Ken Buck leaving Congress in next week. This is from Kapar. He's an NBC journalist. Very surprising, very disturbing, very alarming, very concerning. Jeez. Okay, he's not happy. Meanwhile, a Democratic operative texted me this. At this point, just give us the majority for the rest of the year. Good grief. Now, this is already embarrassing enough for the Republicans. I wonder if we got anything else of Ken Buck, like recent statements of Ken Buck complaining, just so I can show that this isn't anything like super new or surprising. Actually, here is him talking about it right before he left, but there's a ton of clips of him talking like this, maybe not in this intensity, but like this leading up to his resignation. So this didn't come out of like the sky. I mean him resigning right away came out of the sky, but his complaints and his problems with the House did not come out of the sky. Mike Johnson had time to address them. He just didn't. Here is Mike. This is right after Ken Buck announced he was resigning on CNN.
Of Colorado, you just came from the hearing. Before we get to that,
By the way, before we move on to the Langford stuff, I want to talk about how this affects the House race going into the next year. Then we'll move on to Langford.
You announced some big news. You're leaving Congress at the end of next week.
I am, yes. I'm resigning my seat and creating a vacancy in my district.
Why?
Well, everywhere I go in Colorado, Dana, I hear that people are not happy with Trump and they're not happy with Biden. And I think we need to change our electoral laws here. And I have a passion for that. And I'm going to leave and I'm going to find the right organization to join, and I'm going to start working on that issue. We have to have better candidates up and down the ballot, not just president. But
man, he's spent the 118th Congress getting very little done because of the setup of the Congress, and he got so frustrated to the point where he's just tapping out. He's just tapping. He's just, you know what? I'm tapping out. We got to change the structures before we can change anything else.
Senate, House, local offices. We've got to find better ways to elect candidates and bring America together.
You already had announced that you were going to not run for re-election. Why leave now and leave a vacancy in an already very narrow majority for your party?
Yeah, because to me, it's important to get in the mix of this election cycle and start talking about the issues that people recognize are such a problem right now.
You know, my colleague Melanie Zanona is reporting that there is such tension among House Republicans that many of them aren't even going to a retreat that's going to happen at the end of this week. Is that tension part of why you're leaving so abruptly?
I think this place is dysfunctional. For example, I am the number 3rd ranking member of the Judiciary Committee. I haven't even asked my questions yet. 40, 50 people have gone before me.
But that
Oh my God. Damn. Is that real?
could be personal. With
Well,
all
it
due
could be
respect.
personal, but a lot of this is personal, and that's the problem. Instead of having decorum, instead of operating in a professional manner,
50 hearings, hasn't been able to ask a question?
this place has just evolved into this bickering and nonsense, and not really doing the job for the American people.
How much of the fact that you are leaving March 22nd, next Friday, how much does that have to do with the fact that Trump is the presumptive nominee and you're not exactly a fan?
Well, I don't think whether he was the nominee or not, I think our system is broken in how we choose candidates, and I want to get.
There was a problem with our system, that is true, but him being the nominee and him getting involved and crashing all of the bipartisan attempts of legislation this session did certainly probably contribute to the environment that he's talking about.
Involved in that process.
Is it really that miserable right now to be, I mean, from the outside in, it doesn't look that fun. From the inside.
Okay, I don't need to hear how miserable it is. Now, this isn't the only ridiculous backlash that the quote-unquote, and I'm going to say quote-unquote moderate Republicans here because the spectrum is changing so rapidly. I want to talk about Senator Langford. So Senator Langford is not somebody I would traditionally call a moderate. This is somebody who is a hawk on the border. This is somebody from the state of Oklahoma. He's an Oklahoma senator. So even if he wanted to be like I would say a little liberal on the social issues, he'd probably find some issues with that. He is what you would call a red-blooded. You cut his arm, he bleeds red. You cut my arm, I bleed blue. He is a red-blooded Republican. Now, Senator Langford also had the distinction of being the point man for the Republicans during the bipartisan immigration negotiations on an immigration deal so that they could pass a Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel immigration package, because that's what Republicans demanded in order to pass any more aid to any of our allies, be it Ukraine, be it anyone, except for Israel. They did try to go around for Israel. Mike Johnson did try that. Biden vetoed it. Now, James Langford sat down after September when these demands started to get made and Ukraine aid first got blocked. And he sat down and he negotiated for 5 months. For 5 months, Senator Langford negotiated. And can I just say, I would make the point that I think Langford got too much out of us and we got too little in return. I would say that we gave the concessions that we did, concessions that Republicans had been asking for the better part of a decade, very little concessions in return, and we didn't get citizenship for dreamers. We didn't get guaranteed citizenship for dreamers who have been living in this country, in some instances now, for decades, for a very long time. And we've been trying to find a solution for this forever. That has been our demand forever, and we submitted to some of the demands that they've been making forever, but then we didn't get a deal on dreamers. I didn't like that. And I wasn't the only person who expressed some discomfort about that. I know other progressive immigration activists also expressed discomfort about that. But you want to know what that means for the position of Senator Langford? It means that he got probably a pretty good deal for his side if I'm not too happy with it. I mean, that's not true in all instances, but the reason I'm not happy is because I think we gave them too much and got too little. And so if you're from the Republican side, you look at it like this. They tied immigration to Ukraine, two issues which are not related. Two issues that should not be related. Two issues that should not be tied together. The idea of tying this really divisive issue that was a big issue in 2020, was a big issue in 2016, and is going to be a big issue going into 2024 is an issue that Democrats and Republicans starkly disagree on. And tying it after it was shown to be very difficult to get any compromise on this, while you guys have a razor slim majority in the House, no majority in the Senate, that's to the Democrats, and the presidency to Democrats as well. You try to leverage that national security priority in order to get immigration legislation passed on Ukraine aid. I think that playing footsie with our national security like that, playing Russian roulette in that way, pun unintended, I thought it was risky. I thought it was irresponsible. I don't like encouraging that. Could you imagine, oh, you want to help South Korea who's under threat? Well, only if you pass our federal, don't say gay law. I don't like this idea. But did it anyway. And they were able to get a solution. They were able to solution for them at least. They were able to get a deal. And then Trump sunk it because it was an election year. And as somebody who cares a lot about the border, or purports to care a lot about the border, it would heavily undermine his immigration-centered campaign if the Republicans and the Democrats were able to agree to bipartisan immigration legislation. And so legislation that was at first being trumpeted by Lindsey Graham, it was being trumpeted by Mitch McConnell, it was being trumpeted by people in the House, legislation that if it came to the House floor for a vote would undeniably pass, just like Ukraine aid isolated would have undeniably passed and would still undeniably pass to this day, which is the reason people are pursuing a discharge petition. At that point, it was sunk for purely political reasons. There were some that wanted to go further, of course, but if it was brought to a House floor vote, it would have passed. And then we could have solved, or at least in some way tried to address a bunch of these issues at the same time, like Republicans had asked for. But instead, because of the politics of it, because of an election, because of trying to get an edge going into 2024, the deal was sunk. Now, already, I think this is incredibly disrespectful to Senator Langford from the Republican position. Doing this purely, like taking away any policy implementation, taking away what you guys said was your priority. If you guys say that it's an invasion, which I don't like that language, but if you call it an invasion and it's horrible and it's disastrous, everybody's dying, if you're saying that, and then you have it a way, maybe not to deal with everything you wanted, but a lot of what you wanted, to somewhat address it. And then you just say, it's not enough. I never heard somebody starving in a crisis, a famine, and then someone says, okay, we'll give you a quarter of what you need, or even half of what you need. And they say, no, I'd rather starve to death. If it's really the crisis that they suggest, deserving of the response that they are suggesting, then they would be eager to take whatever they can get now, and then they can try to build upon it, build upon the powers that this legislation would have given them come a Trump presidency. But electorally, the calculus is different. And so the deal was sunk, but that wasn't enough. That was not enough. See, during the State of the Union, Joe Biden brought this fact up, brought up the fact that, hey, this deal was sunk and it would have dealt with a lot of the issues you guys talk about. And I've said this a million times, but the cameramen at the State of the Union are some of the best cameramen in the world. They understand where to move the camera to. They understand what to focus on. They got the shots ready in advance. They are on point. And during this interaction where Joe Biden starts hitting on the fact that they sunk this immigration deal for partisan political reasons, it turns over to James Langford, and he starts talking about the things that the bill could have done, and Langford mouths the words, "That's true." And then this opened a whole new can of worms. Let me show you guys this footage.
Here in the House of Thunder, the next tip-off is right around the corner. We're showing up for OKC.
Wow, OKC.
Did you see?
Here it is.
This moment, it's the one being talked about from the State of the Union address last week. Oklahoma Republican Senator James Langford there agreeing with President Biden on the bipartisan immigration bill that was rejected by Republicans earlier this year.
News 9 Storm Jones is live in the newsroom. And Storm, we are getting reaction from the senator and from Oklahoma County Republicans who weren't happy about it.
Yeah, good morning, Robin and Lacey. If you can read those lips there, Senator Langford saying that's true during the State of the Union address. Social media really lit up after the senator's 3-second appearance Thursday night. The Oklahoma County Republican Party even apparently voting to censure the senator this past weekend. Supporters of Senator Langford posted on social media about the censure after the GOP county meeting Saturday. The state party attempted to censure Langford in January over the bipartisan border deal that was ultimately torpedoed by former President Donald Trump coming out against it. Party leaders pulled the state censure back, saying that meeting was illegal and the censure was not binding. Senator Langford did join CNN over the weekend, saying President Joe Biden was correct in the State of the Union when he said the bill would have added 100 immigration judges and more than 1,000 asylum officers.
I was listening to the president, obviously, as he was walking through, and I could hear some of my colleagues around me saying none of that's true. And I was actually listening to the president and said, no, that part actually is true. It would have hired all those additional agents. It would have expedited the process. It would have also changed the asylum standard so we can go through much faster. The only way to be able to solve this problem right now legally is to be able to change the asylum standard and to be able to have much faster hearings. The problem is the president also left out some of the things that he could do. Right now, he's choosing not to do.
We did reach out to the Oklahoma County GOP and Senator Langford's office about that censure over the past weekend. We'll let you know when we hear back.
So Langford got censored by the county GOP from his state because he nodded and he dared to listen to Republican leadership and negotiate a deal with the Democrats to actually get something done during the House session. What should he have done instead? Hey, we want to negotiate an immigration deal with the Democrats. No, we can only do anything if we control all the chambers of the House and the presidency. And if we don't, we do nothing. If there's a meteor barreling towards the earth, we better hope that it doesn't in a year where Ronald Reagan has resuscitated himself from the dead to get us a red wave. Because if it isn't, tough shit, we're all gonna die. What do they want of him? He sat down, he negotiated a deal that was perfectly acceptable until Trump decided to come out against it for electoral reasons. Now, that's already bad enough in and of itself. That's already really bad. That is choosing your own political short-term success over the future of the country if you generally care about this issue. If you want to get stuff like legislation done, you're going to have to compromise when you don't control the Senate and you don't control the presidency, unless your plan is every time you lose an election to just check out of politics for 4 years, 2 to 4 years. So this was already bad enough, but that wasn't the end of it. They had to go further and say for merely attempting to negotiate with the Democrats and for agreeing with the deal that the majority of us agreed with before you said the words "that's true" and before Trump came out and sunk it, you get censored. Pure allegiance to Donald Trump's word or get shut down. Donald Trump has appointed his daughter as co-chair of the RNC. The RNC and Donald Trump's campaign are merging basically into one organization. Donald Trump and his cronies made sure that a provision in the RNC that would have stopped him from using RNC money to pay for his own legal bills, that got sunk too. He's turning the whole party into his own little personal plaything and piggy bank. And we're all watching it happen. And it's not only affecting him, it's affecting others in the party as well. Be completely subservient. Avoid all compromise when I say so, or crushed, censored, shut up. How dare you do what we asked you to do? It's a bizarro world over there right now, man. It's a bizarro world.